Bob Hawk started with Kevin, and I told this story, I think, on our pilot, and I'll say it here again. Kevin...
Well, Kevin started with Bob Hawk.
Yeah, you know what I meant. What I was saying, though, with me here, though, and I said this in our pilot, and I'll say it here because I'm hoping with people that are on the show that Kevin hears this. He's one of the reasons I'm even here holding a microphone. Because if it wasn't for Kevin on his podcast, on his podcast, I think it was when he was doing the tour of James Silent Bob going around the country, and he kept saying, do a podcast, got a microphone, you could talk about everything. That was 5 years ago. And I'm sitting here doing this. And it's all because Kevin, kind of one of those people that said, you could do a podcast. Anyone can do a podcast, and here we are. So I lived this for him, and that's why I would love to talk to him on this show. One of those things. So
sure.
He's the reason
and,
I'm here.
And I certainly can't speak for him, but I'm sure he would, as he's appeared on other podcasts, and, he loves those types of stories, He had people that inspired him, like Richard Linklater and such, and there's now a huge generation with you and me and many others that are just inspired from his work and continue his legacy. Like now with the Bob Hawk story, it's a huge part of Kevin. Like if you were to make a documentary on Kevin, which somebody eventually will, Bob Hawk would play a big part of that.
It's true. It's very,
and
very
at
true.
Sundance, and this is on YouTube, someone did tape it. Kevin says about Film Hawk, this is a documentary that I should have made. And Ty and I are in the audience like, this is awesome.
That's fantastic. What I might do...
But it would have been totally different.
What I might do, actually, I'll find that audio, and maybe I'll play it at the end of this so people can hear that, because that sounds like Kevin having a lot of fun. So, and well, that being said, we kind of keep our shows short for people that are listening in the morning as the show drops off. But thank you so much, JJ. This was a lot of fun. This is actually a nice education, really, in history when it comes to the movie world, which I do like learning about little by little. I do appreciate coming on and doing this. Give us one more plug where they can find you, where they can find the film. Go for it.
Go to Twitter at BobHawkDoc. At BobHawkDoc. We're on Facebook too. Just look up Film Hawk. But we see all the tweets. Ty and I run it, and Kevin retweets on us and stuff. And Bob Hawk Doc, and you can see the film on iTunes or the TribecaShortlist.com.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking about Film Hawk.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all for listening. And like I said at the beginning of the show, this was kind of a dull minute, which is why I stood up that interview. I figured, let's have something different today and end our week with a nice interview talking about Bob Hawk and a documentary that links into Clerks. So I hope you enjoyed that. And thank you all for listening. We're a part of the Feeling Joy Podcast Network. You can find it everywhere. I'm not going to do the whole list today. It's been a long day for me. So find us on Patreon, where you're currently talking about the Clerks cartoon, and get our shirts over at TeePublic, and more and more and more. Facebook group, the Facebook Clerks. The Clerks convenience store community, we have a lot of fun over there. We're going to be talking about movies, and I'll be plugging this there so you can actually watch this documentary. I know I'm going to go out my way. I'm going to watch this doc. It sounds like a lot of fun. So, till then, I'm Blake. Thank you so much for listening to the Clerks Minute.
Snoring, smoking weed, doing coke, drinking beers, rolling fatties, smoking blunts. Who smokes the blunts? We smoke the blunts, rolling blunts and smoking.
An odd trait, we're crybabies. Man, we are bad. Our daughters' weddings are going to be a mess because we're not going to be even.
Our daughters are getting married together.
So here's what I want to say about Bob. Bob is a friend, first and foremost. But for me, Bob is a mentor. See what happens? I cry and then I get better. I never had a mentor before. But he taught me way back in 1990 when I started as a programmer. He taught me that film had many faces and many styles. And he taught me as a programmer, I had a responsibility to remember that. And we brought him on to help us with Sundance much in the early years. And I think it was, Sundance would not be the same without Bob Hawke's influence over this whole thing. And that's all I'm going to say, because that's all I can get out at this point. I'm going to actually introduce the directors who had a lot to do with this as well. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, every once in a while in your life you meet somebody who takes you to a completely different place, an absolute stranger. What you're going to see is a movie about somebody who's changed so many lives simply because he's passionate about film. This movie is so wonderful. I don't just say that because I'm in it. I enjoy myself in it and stuff. But at the same time, my hats go off to the boys, man, who Coop's going to bring up, because honestly, I'm ashamed. This is a movie I should have made. This man is my hero, my fucking legend and stuff. But I'm so glad that these guys exist because they made the movie that Bob Hawke deserves. Introduce them.
So our directors.
Right now, it is my great pleasure to welcome a close friend of Bob Hawke and one of the giants of independent filmmaking. Please welcome Mr. Kevin Smith. That giant thing is a fat joke, I assure you. Thanks for being here this morning, ladies and gentlemen. This movie is perfect for Outfest because this is a film about a life spent in film as well as a life spent being just gay as fuck. So you're going to enjoy the hell out of this movie. I go way back with the subject of the film, as you'll see in the flick itself. Bob Hawke discovered Clerks. Without Bob Hawke, I wouldn't be standing here. I probably wouldn't have even ever driven by this building because I wouldn't be in Los Angeles. None of the things that have happened over the 22 years since we made Clerks would have happened if Bob hadn't been in the audience that day. Ironically, it was a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. Same thing, man. So as I was driving over here, my wife's like, "Where'd you go?" And I was like, "I'm going to the DGA to intro Bob's movie." And she's like, "So early?" And I remembered, I wrote back, I was like, he did it for me once 22 years ago. Woke up very early and changed my life. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Before I hand you over to the good folks that made the movie, man, JJ and Ty, who I owe a life debt to because this is a movie I should have made. This man was my hero, changed my world and stuff. I should have made this documentary. I'm almost glad that they did it because they unabashedly put my interview where I'm bawling into the movie and stuff. Had I been the director, I would have left that out instead. So I'm glad they got to do it. And the film honors somebody who not just changed my life professionally, and Bob absolutely did that. Nobody ever would have heard of Clerks or me if he hadn't been at that screening at 11 o'clock on October 3rd on a Sunday morning. Bob changed my life personally as well. I've always liked to think of myself as a friend of the gay community and stuff. I was raised in a town where nobody was progressive. Not to paint them as all like hicks or something like that, but I grew up in the 70s and the 80s and started working making Clerks in the early 90s. It was in a period before there was mass acceptance and whatnot. Gay was still the other to a lot of people in my world. My brother wound up being gay and stuff, so that was very helpful in as much as keeping me more enlightened than most of my compatriots, and I don't want to paint them as Cro-Magnons. We just didn't have gay people in our world as far as we knew. So I meet Bob, and Bob sees Clerks and starts talking it up. We go to Sundance. Bob and I become very good friends, and at one point, you'll see in the documentary, Bob comes to live with me pretty early in my career. So at a certain point into my very straight world full of friends who were just like, ew, that's gay, still using it as a negative, as a descriptor and stuff, entered this 50-plus-year-old gay man who I was suddenly like, I'm living with him. And it was like a bizarre Three's Company for all my friends all of a sudden. But what I love about that, when I was thinking about it on the drive over, was Bob was the guy that, he was the ambassador into my world. I couldn't tell my friends, oh my God, you gotta like gay people, they're no different than us. I grew up fat, so there was this kind of idea of being ostracized for something that you just liked doing. Always, I had a sympathetic factor for it. I had a lot of thin friends, so that thing didn't exist for them. So I couldn't sit there and be like, you all gotta love gay people and shut like I do. Bob was the guy that made them love gay people. He was the first gay person that entered their world, and he was delightful. He wasn't the other anymore. He was their friend. He was the, oh my God, he's hysterical. Oh my God, he loves movies. Oh my God, he loves talking about dick. But like that it opened up a world for my friends. Like I'm never uncomfortable around my friends anymore. There were times, and again, I don't want to paint them as like, you know, sheet-wearing folks or anything, but there were times when I was young where, you know, it's like, oh man, fucking, you just wish your friends thought like you do, maybe were a little more enlightened, a little more accepting like you were or something like that. I would have been quiet about it my whole life, probably. Not brave enough to step up and be like, hey man, why don't you consider this kind of thing? I was a product of my environment, so I just would have sat there quietly. Thanks to Bob, I never had to. Thanks to Bob, I had an example for all my friends to look at and be like, oh man, it's not like, that's not what I thought being gay was at all. This guy's badass and shit like that. We now live in a world that's very much, in my world, I can't speak for everybody, but Los Angeles as well, very, very much more accepting than when Bob moved into my house in the 90s. And when I say the world, I mean my friends and stuff. Like Jason Mewes used to fucking talk about gay people as mysterious Martians from another world. Now I'm pretty sure he's bi-curious at his age. So that had everything to do with this man and this individual you're about to watch the movie. It's one thing for him to come into my life and give me a career. I'll always be thankful for that, because I probably still would have been working in that fucking convenience store. But what he did for me personally was so much more, and something I never probably would have or could have done for myself, man. He expanded the horizons of everybody around me and made suddenly that other wasn't an other, it was one of us. So anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna give it back to Alonzo, and he's gonna do the official introduction to JJ and Ty, two wonderful filmmakers who have the tenacity, temerity, and just courage to step up and be like, this guy deserves to have he deserves to have a lens focused on him. And they did it, and it's quite beautiful. This is one of my favorite people in the world, ladies and gentlemen, who you're about to watch tonight. It is an honor to be standing in the DGA to introduce a movie about a guy who helped so many other people launch